Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and welcome aboard the Eastern Express. In this episode, we will explore the world of natural gas and the giant that's currently gasping for air, Gazprom. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Gazprom, let me catch you up. Picture a colossal behemoth that once dominated the European natural gas market, only to find itself floundering like a fish out of water. Yes, Gazprom, the Russian state-controlled energy titan, has hit rock bottom. It is not a pretty sight. We're talking about a financial loss so staggering it makes the Titanic look like a minor boating accident. So, without further ado, let's look at our latest report to find out more.
Russia energy giant Gazprom has reported its first annual loss in 24 years. The company, which has been a cornerstone of Russia's energy exports, faced unprecedented challenges due to the West's stringent sanctions and a significant reduction in trade with Europe. The financial report released on May 2, 2024, revealed a stark contrast to Gazprom's typically robust earnings, marking the first loss since the late 1990s. Analysts had anticipated a net income of $5 billion, but the reality proved to be a sobering wake-up call for the energy giant, with net loss of almost $7 billion. Gazprom's difficulties stem from the ongoing geopolitical tensions with the West's ban on Russian energy exports following the Ukrainian conflict. These sanctions have not only impacted Gazprom's profitability, but also led to a strategic shift in Europe's energy supply chain, seeking alternatives to Russian gas. Gazprom's financial struggles are reminiscent of its challenges in the late 1990s, when it incurred heavy losses due to the foreign currency debt, exacerbated by the financial crisis of 1998. This downturn in Gazprom fortune is not just a financial setback, but also symbolic of Russia's waning influence in the global energy sector. Once a tool for geopolitical leverage, Gazprom's current predicament reflects the broader implications of Russia's international isolation and the shift towards alternative energy sources by former European clients.
And now, let's take a look at the issue in greater detail. Let's break down the numbers first. In 2023, Gazprom reported a whooping loss of about $8 billion. For a company that raked in $30.5 billion in profit just a year before, this nosedive is nothing short of catastrophic. It's like going from hosting the Oscars to busking on a street corner. So, what went wrong? Well, for starters, Gazprom lost its biggest market, Europe. Due to geopolitical tensions and sanctions, Europe decided that it didn't want to rely on Russian gas anymore. It's like finding out your favorite restaurant has been using spoiled ingredients. You just stop going. European countries scrambled to find alternative energy sources, leaving Gazprom out in the cold. Literally. The gas division saw a massive decline, but hey, at least the oil business saw a 70% increase. Silver linings, right? But just when you think it couldn't get any worse, Gazprom announced that it wouldn't be paying dividends. Now, dividends are like little candies companies throw to their shareholders to keep them happy. Gazprom, however, decided to keep the candy bowl empty. The Russian government, holding the majority stake, ordered the company to withhold payments. Shareholders, understandably, were not thrilled, much like going to a birthday party and finding out that there is no cake. Tragic. Analysts were hoping for a miracle, suggesting that Gazprom could adjust its book to show a profit, but no, the losses were too deep, too real. So, where does Gazprom go from here? Well, they've got a few options. They can focus on their oil businesses, which has been a saving grace so far. They could also look at increasing domestic gas prices, though that's a bit like trying to make lemonade out of very sour lemons. Gazprom's future is like a choose-your-own-adventure book with all the good endings ripped out. Now, one interesting idea floated by analysts is for Gazprom to partner with countries like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. These nations have commitments to supply gas to China, but are currently falling short. Gazprom could step in to fill that gap, essentially becoming the middleman. It's not a perfect solution, but when you're drowning, any lifeline looks good. In the meantime, Gazprom will have to navigate these turbulent waters with caution. They need to balance their financial woes with the need to maintain their market position. Perhaps it is a reminder that even the mightiest can fall and no giant is too big to fail. And now, here to shed more light on the issue is Bartosz Podolsky, a Vice Dean at the Koźmiński University. Hello, sir, and welcome to Eastern Express.
Hello, welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
So we're looking at the Gazprom's nosedive, and can you first help us understand just how impactful that would be for the Russian economy?
So we have to understand that all the sanctions which European Union and US put on the Russia start working, and it's not start working immediately, but it takes a little bit longer period of the time. Just we'll see it now. So we now see the first problem of the Gazprom, first big problem of the Gazprom, because they stopped the contract from Europe to Gazprom, and they have a problem with the demand of the product. So that's what's happening on the market.
Right, like you mentioned, these impact were actually sort of delayed in the beginning onset of the war. People have been questioning the effectiveness of these sanctions. Can you give us some other examples of these delayed impact of the sanctions that we're perhaps seeing right now, or things that we can see down the line in the future?
So we must know and understood that around 80% of gross domestic product of Russia based on the resources just like gas and oil, petrol, yes? So basically, if those companies have a problem like Gazprom, yes, it's have an impact on the whole Russia and whole Russia gross domestic product. Yes, the other businesses are also important, but they can easily move on to the other part of world. For example, selling the product in Asia, and as we know, Asian countries didn't put any sanction on the Russia. So the case is the biggest problem with this for Russia with the sanction is the first one is do not supply of the some kind of parts to cars, to planes, some kind of sophisticated software, yes, and hardware. And the second thing is, of course, the question about demand and the option to sell their product. So the most problem, of course, have now a Gazprom. Other case, there's, for example, Aeroflot, who have also problem because half of the fleet of the Aeroflot is grounded because they do not have enough parts to operate.
All right, so reeling back to the Gazprom situation, of course, they're looking for ways out in terms of finding customers for these gas. And one of the places they've been turning to is the Central Asian region that you were talking about. Do you think this will be an effective way to alleviate some of its woes, or do you think this will not be enough to bring it back to its previous level?
So it depends how fast is it, because we have to remember that on the gas market and oil market, we have to get infrastructure. So now the sanction also starts working because they own infrastructure to other suppliers of this kind of products. So it's also the question when the Asian countries like China, for example, or India have also the whole infrastructure to buy Russian products. So it's not only just buying or not selling. It's not go, for example, to buy a bottle of the water, but you have a full line of the production of the changing the product, oil or gas. So you have to switch your economy. You have to switch part of your economy, yes, in industry to new resources. So it's not so easy for Chinese. It's not so easy for India. Yes, but it's also not so easy for Europe. But the process is started, so probably Russia have to get the diversification of the customers, of the demand.
Right, and speaking of China and infrastructure, of course, we also know that there has been an attempt for Russia to cooperate with China, which somehow did not go as well as planned when it regards to these new infrastructure like the Power of Siberia 2. Can you help us understand that situation a little bit?
So the question is always who will pay for the whole infrastructure. So as you probably know, Asia countries are quite smart. They are not just goes in the Europe that they want to have their own infrastructure, but they prefer that somebody will build for them the infrastructure. So it's the problem. This is the case. So if Russia do not have the money to build the infrastructure, to build a part of the infrastructure, just like previously they built the Nord Stream, yes. So it's quite complicated to start operating on the business because now everybody if you wanted to sell your product, you have to deliver it, you have to operate, you have to support us because you earn the money on us. So why you shouldn't put some kind of capital expenditure on this kind of business? So this is the main issue. And Chinese and India know that they can put a little bit more pressure on Russia because Russia do not have any other option than they. So if you are on the winner position, your negotiations are harder and you put more pressure to Russia, and Russia do not have enough money to just operate with it.
Right. So it does seem like all these sanctions coming together is really pressing Russia to force their hand. And when it comes to this particular situation, yeah, like you mentioned, like Russia is in a weaker position to negotiate. This, of course, is a drastic contrast compared to the onset, the beginning of the war, that Russia seems to be able to leverage these energy resources as a weapon, as a tool for being on a negotiation table. At what point did that change? At what point did Russia start becoming having the weaker hand on the table?
So what I want to just say a few seconds ago, the weaker hands of the Russia goes in this way that all of the world knows that Russia have a problem, on the war. The Russia have a problem with deliver their product with the market, with the demand. So if you know that that your business partner have some kind of problem, and you can get it more money on him, you put more pressure on. You put more pressure to get your results. So this is what's happening, yes? So even the Chinese and other Asian countries wanted to operate with Russia, they know that they can have a better negotiation position than the Russia, and they put more pressure on them. So that's also create the Russia is weaker and weaker and weaker.
Right, I think this is one of the misconceptions that we used to have when it comes to these sanctions. People are saying that it's not effective because Russia can just sell them to China, to India. But the fact is, by going through those routes and giving them a very limited option, it seems to actually pressure them and did string their purse strings a little bit. How far do you think this impact will carry forward? And do you think if the sanctions were kept up, it would be able to bring Gazprom or the Russian economy down even further?
So I think this is the other factor which we should focus on it, because that we on October we have election in the United States. So probably the election will show us what will be in United States, what will be the other point of view on the world, and also United States on this war. Because if the new administration or the old administration have created a big pressure on the end of the year 2024 to finish this war, yes, so probably we'll starting back into the normal what happened before the war or what happened before the Crimea crisis, because we have to understand that all the problems start when we have Crimea crisis in 2014, not exactly now. Now we have an escalation of it. Yes, so the future election in US and point of view a new administration on old administration can give us the answer what will happening in this part of the world.
Right. And speaking of the election in the United States, of course, there's also talks of if there is a change in administration, they will revert the reduction of fossil fuel use. And, well, to quote Trump's word, they'll start drill, baby, drill. And if that indeed happened, do you think that would also be another hit to Gazprom or the Russian fuel market?
So, of course, everything can have a pressure, and could put it. We have to understand if Trump will win. Trump is a businessman, so he wanted to earn more money. He wanted to create the the American economy stronger than it is now. Yes, so he'll more focus about the economy, more focus about the business. Yes, but when we have Democrats, we know that they goes a little bit more about the social rights, a little bit more for the general wealth of the world, yes. But to be honest, it's a question when the election will be a new point in US for the world, how it goes on with this problem. So it's quite too hard how it will change it exactly. Yes, we know that will be Republicans will be more business oriented, and Democrats will go generally about the, you can say, status quo which we have it now.
All right. Thank you so much for helping us break down all these very complicated issues. Thanks for your input and insight. And thanks again for being with us on Eastern Express.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. Goodbye.
And now we're moving on to the Eastern News Flash, a series of all the other stories from the East that you don't want to miss. Ukraine has announced stringent border controls. Men of conscription age holding dual citizenship are no longer permitted to leave the country. Now, this move comes as part of Ukraine's ongoing mobilization drive in response to the shortage of manpower in the army.
Ukraine does not officially recognize dual citizenship, and the enforcement of this policy has been inconsistent. However, the new legislation codifies the treatment of dual citizens as Ukrainian nationals, who are now required to fulfill their obligations to protect the country from the ongoing Russian invasion. The border guards would now consider Ukrainians holding dual citizenships as Ukrainian citizens. Instances where individuals will attempt to cross the border by presenting themselves as foreigners is now a punishable offense. Previously, dual citizens could depart Ukraine if they had registered their Ukrainian residency and registered their residency abroad. However, this exception has been revoked under the new mobilization law that took effect in May. The latest update has raised concerns among the affected population, as many dual citizens who have lived abroad for years find themselves unable to return to their countries of residence.
Moscow has announced the deployment of additional military instructors to Burkina Faso. Now, this decision comes as part of Russia's ongoing efforts to bolster the defense capabilities of the nation, which has been grappling with a persistent terrorist threat.
During a press conference in Burkina Faso's capital, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov confirmed that the number of Russian military instructors in Burkina Faso will see an increase. The move is seen as a continuation of Russia's strategy to enhance its influence across the African continent, especially after its relations with Western countries deteriorated following the invasion of Ukraine. Burkina Faso, which has experienced a military coup in 2022, has since distanced itself from former colonial powers and sought new allies. The arrival of Captain Ibrahim Traoré to power marked a pivot towards Moscow for military assistance, replacing the French military presence in the country. Lavrov's visit to Burkina Faso is part of a wider regional tour, signaling a deepening of ties between Moscow and African nations.
Turkmenistan has emerged as the only Central Asian country to boast a trade surplus with China. This economic feat places Turkmenistan in a unique position, contrasting sharply with other Central Asian nations that face significant trade deficit with the Asian giant.
The first quarter of 2024 saw Turkmenistan's trade turnover with China reach nearly $2.6 billion, with a staggering 92% attributed to Turkmenistan's natural gas sales. The trade figures between the two have overshadowed the bilateral trade with Russia, which stood at just over $1.6 billion for the entire year of 2023. Despite this favorable balance, however, diplomatic relations paint a different picture. A recent state celebration in Turkmenistan marking the 300th anniversary of national poet Magrimudli Fragi saw a relatively low-level Chinese delegation in attendance. This was perceived as a diplomatic snub, despite the delegation receiving a warm welcome. Turkmen Foreign Minister Rashid Meredov has described China as a key strategic partner, with relations effectively developing across various spheres. However, the level of diplomatic engagement from Beijing does not seem to reflect the economic importance of Turkmenistan's partnership.
The Lithuanian parliament has passed a reform concerning the military obligation of its young citizens. The reform stipulates that all high school graduates will be subject to military conscription before they are eligible to pursue higher education.
Under the new law, students enrolled in higher education will no longer be called up for military duty. Instead, conscription will be mandatory for all high school graduates, who will only be allowed to attend university after completing their basic military service. The reform sets the age of medical qualification at 17, with conscription starting from the age of 18 up to 2022. The standard duration of service is set at 9 months, although this may be reduced to 6 months depending on the needs of the Lithuanian armed forces. In addition to the general conscription, the reform also provides for the conscription of university graduates who have specialized in fields deemed necessary by the military. These individuals will undergo a 3-month basic training program, particularly those with degrees in medicine, aviation, and other technical fields. The overreaching goal of this reform is to build an active reserve composed of specialists who can serve according to their expertise in times of crisis.
And that's all on this episode of Eastern Express. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.